Welcome to Everything is For You podcast, where we explore the full spectrum of personal and professional growth. We deep dive into how we evolve, finding our purpose, and the art of being truly present. Today, we have a fascinating guest whose journey and work break boundaries in every sense of the word. Jacq Frances is an artist, an author, comedian, and a former stripper whose voice has challenged social norms, particularly around sex work, empowerment, and queerness. Her latest show, Heterosexlandia, is a comical, heartfelt exploration of what happens when a queer ex-stripper moves to South Central Idaho, tackling themes of small-town queerness, loneliness, and self-discovery with humor and honesty. Jacq and I first met during an ayahuasca retreat in Colombia. We were both navigating some really major life changes, going through very painful divorces, and we connected on that. Today, I am so thrilled to have her here, and we're going to dive into her journey, the inspiration behind Heterosexlandia, and how to use art and humor to spark conversations about identity, healing, and empowerment. Thank you for joining us on Everything is For You. Now I welcome my good friend, Jacq.
Hey, Kristin. Sorry.
And wait, what's your puppy's name?
And Raja, come here. Just introduce yourself. You know,
Yes.
my enthusiasm whenever I say hi on the phone. Oops, sorry. This is Raja.
Hi, Raja.
And she just got a dye job. She's a tiger.
Oh, I saw that. That's so cute.
I mean, I had to do it.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Well, I'm so excited. I mean, we met in 2022 in Colombia at an ayahuasca retreat, and we were both going through divorces. I think we were both pretty new, fresh in the divorce area, weren't you at that time?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't even finalized yet.
Yeah. Mine was finalized during that trip.
Wow.
Yeah, so we met there. That was a really awesome experience for myself, and I believe it was as well for you.
And yeah, it was great. It was great. It was a very fruitful retreat. Actually, I mean, that was a great retreat. And working with plant medicine, working with ayahuasca has been a big part of my life since 2020. So almost 5 years. It's really been some strong medicine that has really lit up my path in ways I've never expected. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Have you done ayahuasca since that retreat again? Yeah.
Yeah, I did some a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to go and sit with it every 18 months. That's been the pattern for the past 5 years. Every year and a half, I go for like a little spiritual tune-up. And so yeah, that seems to be the pattern. And it's really helpful.
That it is. I'm thinking about, I know that Ancestral Retreats is doing another one in January again. And
Yeah.
I'm really thinking about trying to make that one. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But so, okay, I really, because we've got so much to cover with you because you have a fascinating chapters of life. I did some homework on you, and you studied Russian literature and cultural theory, and then you became an artist, stripper, and comedian.
Yeah, just the normal career trajectory of, like academia to sex work. You know what?
Right.
It's more common than you think. There's like sex work is more common than you think. It's the oldest profession. All kinds of people are doing it. And I've always kind of been in the game. Like ever since I knew my pussy had power, I was pimping it out. Like my first sugar daddy bought me groceries in university. You know what I mean? Like I was just always in the game. But but I was I love school. I've always loved being a student. I love learning. I'm smart as shit, always have been. and it's made me really good at all of the things that I do. And I didn't really talk too much about my education when I was in the strip game, because especially in the United States. In Canada, education is accessible to everyone. It's not so expensive. I think it's free now. And at the time, my schooling was like, a couple grand a year for the Harvard of Canada. So like education is just more available for everyone, but I kind of stopped talking about it when I was in the United States, because it's such a privilege. And one thing that I've learned living in the United States, and like one thing I've learned about privilege, is that we all try to hide our privilege. So I just didn't see that it was like worth talking about. But yeah, I have a great education. I mean, learning Russian lit taught me that I don't like speaking Russian, because the Russians don't care that you're trying. And I like positive encouragement when I'm learning. So that's why I love like Spanish and French, because they're all like, bravo. Well, the French don't care, but I've been speaking French for a long time. But Spanish speaking people are so supportive and encouraging, whereas Russians just sit there and look at you, like, wait till you're finished trying. And, and, um, And yeah, and the books, Russian literature taught me that brevity is the soul of wit. Like I didn't even read all of Tolstoy. I read the Cliff's Notes and partied the rest of the time, like most students.
Exactly, like most students.
But I have not picked up a Russian book since. I went to Russia. I studied there, and I was like really hoping that I was going to meet a bunch of ballerinas and poets, and I just met a bunch of drunks. And like, but that's school, you know what I mean? I don't even know what I was excited. Expectations ruin everything. And like, but I'm at the same time, I'm very grateful for my degree, because I wrote a lot, and I'm a writer. And when you go to university, like you often just get there and feel dumb. And that was part of my path too. Like I got to school after being kind of the top of all of my classes, and I was like, oh, I'm stupid. But that's an important part of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how did you go from after you graduated with your college degree to stripping?
I went traveling. I got a job right out of university working in advertising, and it was very hard to get a job out of university. I graduated in 2009. So there were no jobs, but I sent out 100 resumes. I got 2 callbacks, and I got 1 job offer, and I took it. And the job was to assess ad opportunities in bathroom stalls. So my job after graduating from Canada's Harvard was to go into the shitter and take photos. This is before the iPhone, or like as the iPhone was emerging, but they were still advertisements in bathrooms. And my job was to take pictures of bathrooms. And I was like, you know what? This isn't for me. And sneaking into bathrooms was cool. I liked that. It was entering it into a spreadsheet that I could not be bothered with. So I had that job for 2 months. And then I was like, and they offered me a full-time position. And I was like, thank you so much. I'm going to go to Asia. So I flew to Thailand, where I lived for 4 months, where I became a go-go dancer from Craigslist. And it was in Thailand. And I've always been a dancer. I've always been an entertainer. I've always been in nightlife. It's always my passion. I just thought like, oh, there's no career in that for me, because I will never be good enough. And it was in Thailand where I was like working at this nightclub dancing, and it wasn't really I mean, sure, it's sexy, but it wasn't a sex club. It was a very kind of like touristy, kind of family friendly go-go dancing. And but I realized I was making a living. I was working 4 nights a week, making $60 a night, which is like so much money in Thailand. And I was like, oh my God, I am making a living as an entertainer. So, and then I got in a motorbike accident in Thailand and had to leave because I was like I couldn't walk. And that was horrible. So, but I wasn't ready to go home. I did not want to go home. Canada is home, but I didn't want to live there. So Australia was closer. So I went to Australia, where I got a working holiday visa for a year and recovered from my injury for like a month. And I had like a bartending job. And in Australia, no one tips. And I
Right.
love money. I love tips. Like that's why I did it. Montreal is a very tip forward culture,
Hmm.
which is where I had done all of my nightlife work. And like I remember they gave me a rock glass. I was like I called in, I was like, "Hey, can I come pick up my tips?" They were like, "Yeah, sure." And I walked in and they gave me a rock glass of nickels and dimes. And I was like,
Okay,
"Absolutely
this
not.
isn't for
No.
me.
This is not for me." So I was always curious about being a stripper. Um, but I had never pulled the trigger because it was like a class issue, right? Like, you know, middle class girls don't become strippers. And like, you don't want people finding out. You don't want to do it where you've got friends. But I had zero friends in Australia. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to be a stripper. And like after my first shift, I was like, this is amazing. I love this. And then 10 years go by, stripped
Right.
all
But
over the
you
world.
traveled. Yeah, you didn't just stay in Australia. You went to New York and got married and all of that.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. It's a great job, or it was a
Mhm.
great job for me because I could do it anywhere. You just show up and you just get naked and you're like, how'd I work? And they just generally say yes.
And so from there you've always been, an entertainer and an artist, and it kind of did that give you inspiration of kind of to start creating some art with that, because I know that one of your first short films that you did, I saw it and I really enjoyed it, was Brian. Is that the correct title? Yeah, and you
Tuesdays with
played,
Brian.
yeah, Tuesdays with Brian, and you played Brian,
Yes.
and that was really fun to watch. But yeah, so was that your first piece of art that you created from being a stripper?
No, so I write every day. I've had a very serious writing practice since I was like 7.
And you also
Like I
draw as well.
And I draw. Yeah,
Yeah.
I painted this shirt that I'm wearing. You don't have to be
Oh,
good to be great. Yeah. I draw. I've been painting since I was 2 years old. I've always been an artist. Then I've always been a writer. I remember the first night I came home, I was writing in my journal and I was like, it wasn't that big a deal. Like I thought I was going to walk into some sort of like harrowing carnival of violence instead. Like I really thought I was walking into something dangerous. And it was just a workplace
hmm.
with a bunch of hot girls and a bunch of lonely dudes. And like, yeah, sure, there's drugs and alcohol there. There's drugs and alcohol everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I was just like, like my experience that I'm having is nothing like what I believed it was, based on pop culture's representation of the work. And so I immediately knew it was something that I was going to explore. I didn't know how or what. I had no idea what was going to come of it. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, I just always wrote about it. I had a secret blog because I wasn't ready to show my identity, right? Because
Hmm.
like once you're out of the closet, the sex work closet, you can never go back in. It follows you everywhere. Like even now, the stigma in Idaho is quite noticeable. Like I've changed my name. I'm trying to get work doing other things. And a lot of people, because it's so Mormon and so repressed sexually, like a lot of people will not even acknowledge my existence.
Wow.
And we can't say that it's based on my work history, but why else would it be then? They just don't acknowledge me. Everybody's watching. It's a small town.
Uh-huh.
I am the entertainment. It's funny living in a small town. Like, have you ever lived in a small town?
I have, but I was young. Yeah.
Yeah, you grew up in a small town, so you
No,
know
I
the way
didn't grow
everyone
up in a
walks.
small town. I just spent some time in a
Uh,
small town when I was young.
okay.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a small town. And I didn't, I mean, I'm very grateful for my upbringing, but what I didn't like about it is what I'm faced with again today is that everybody's watching. Like what people do is the local entertainment, right?
Hmm.
So, and discussing other people's personal lives and everything is like the entertainment. Like that's what people do.
But with somebody like yourself who is, on what I would consider a conscious path, and very aware of yourself and aware of growth, and you seemed like somebody that's consistently reinventing herself. And
Mm.
what is it that draws you to enjoying living in an environment like that? And is it somewhere you see yourself staying for long?
I love it. So everybody asks, they're like, how long are you going to stay? Do people ask that in LA? Like, do people, I mean, people, like, I don't know how long I'm planning on staying. I'm planning on staying for as long as I feel welcome and appreciated. What brought me here was family. My uncle lives here.
Mm,
Um, and I haven't lived near family since I was 17 years old, since I was a child.
mhm,
So, and I didn't realize how badly I needed family. So what drew me was I was burnt out on LA. I had tried living in LA for almost a
mhm,
year, and I was very lonely, and I still
mhm,
love LA. I cannot wait to come back. I can't wait to come back. But, I was lonely. I wasn't really making friends, and I really wanted community. And the plan was to go back to LA, I think. But I just came here for the summer and I had a fantastic time and I love skiing. So
mhm.
now I'm
Wait,
now I'm skiing all the time. I
yeah,
ski every day.
that's
It's
amazing.
so
And you
I
did,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, you looked like you were having a good time. Like I was watching your journey, via Instagram and so forth, but
Yeah.
your summer and then you skiing, and it really looked like you were having a ball. So that's really good. And bringing it back to LA and loneliness, I think that a lot of people experience that when you first arrive in LA.
Uh-huh.
I've been here for 30 years now. So, but I remember when I came, and it took me a good 2 years before I found like my center and my group. And
Yeah.
now I tell a lot of the younger kids that were my age when I came, they're my age. They're in their 20s, and a
Mhm.
lot of kids in the movies on the sets and stuff, and they're always like, "Oh, it's so hard to make friends. It's really challenging." And I'm like, "Give it 2 years. Once your
Yeah.
2 year mark, once you hit that 2 years, you'll start finding your group. But it does take that time for sure. LA is very spread out, and it's an interesting community to build. But once you build it, it's really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love LA. And
yeah,
it's fun and I agree with you. It takes time. I lived in New York City for 10 years and it took me I remember at 2.5 years in New York City, I had gotten married and I had like zero local friends who I invited to the wedding. That's how many friends I had. You know what I mean?
right,
Which is sort of a
right.
testament to the relationship I was in. But but when I moved here, I had so many friends immediately. Like it just clicked and you got to listen to like when it works and when it doesn't.
Yeah. And it seems like it has been working there for you because you've been creating a lot, and you've been, doing these shows and doing classes, and
Yeah.
you're just constantly creating new things, and it's really really cool to watch that. So let's kind of
Thank
talk
you.
about your new show, because
Yeah.
Heterosexualandia. Wait,
Heterosexlandia. I like saying the word
Heterosexlandia. Yeah.
heterosexuality. I like saying the word heterosexual because I always said it with such disdain. Like, oh, how heterosexual. Like, because I like saying homosexual as well. There's something so poetic and like theatrical about like the word. It's so many syllables. You know what I mean? Like, it's funny to say. And, um, and when I moved here, it feels very much like it's heterosexlandia. It's a very, um, it feels kind of monocultural here. And my work, I have a lot of spiritual work to do, but my work is to include people, to make them feel welcome. And like, while you may look, uh, you know, we all may look quite similar in this community where I live. We all have a lot going on inside ourselves that is also probably similar, but we're hiding. And I know that my work is to bring people with me, to bring people up with me.
Hmm.
Yeah, to use my privilege to be as inclusive as possible. And it's funny too, because I'm trying to be inclusive here, but it's like, it's so important. It's so necessary. And in LA, for example, I'm doing a show. I'm having an ASL interpreter. Because when I was a kid, my sister and I taught each other sign language so that we could talk to each other in the car without my dad knowing. what we were saying.
Oh, that's
And
funny.
he would get so angry. He got so fucking angry about it. And it was hilarious. And so I know a little bit of sign language. And years ago, somebody asked if my show had an ASL interpreter. I was like, no, sorry, it doesn't. I was like, how cool would it be if it did? So I'm
Yeah.
just experimenting with like, what does inclusion look like? Like, how can I do
Mhm.
it? And for this, I was like, I want an ASL interpreter. Plus, I think they're cool. Like, I think somebody beside me also sharing the stage. I've had to learn how to share the stage in recent years because when being a stripper is a solo act, and so is being a comedian. It's very
Mhm.
much a solo endeavor, and and I'm really exploring loneliness, and it's lonely being a comedian. Like it's lonely doing all the work myself. I don't want to anymore. But I've also learned when I went to clown school that it's very hard for me to share the stage because I'm so used to doing it alone. And
Mhm.
so many people are like, it's a control issue. It's a control issue. I'm like, is it a control issue or is it just that like I I never had anyone else to play with, so I did it
Mhm.
myself. Like I just didn't have a community of people who, and I didn't have time. Like comedy
Mhm.
is like a solo endeavor, and that's what you have the time for. But now I really feel the desire to share, so it's like sharing the stage with other actors. Now I'm producing more group work. I'm dancing with people. I'm teaching dance. I'm including like ASL interpreters. That's sharing the stage so that more people
Yeah.
can appreciate it. It's just like whatever comes to mind. I'm like, okay, let's try that. And I fail constantly. I
But
fail constantly, but I love my life.
that's great. And it's not
Yeah.
it's you can call it failure, but it's really just growth
Learn.
and yeah. And it's really, you're exploring. And not everything like what I like to say is like let's throw a bunch of stuff on the wall and whatever sticks and then it's going to work. But you got to throw a bunch of stuff on the wall and see if it's going to stick. And not everything is. And but it's you're brave enough to consistently create, and that is something very special. And a lot of us aren't brave enough to do that because of what you're saying is failure. But is it really failure? No, because you're getting closer and closer to something that is going to really work, and also you're enjoying the process. And that's what I've been learning the last couple years is what lights me up. What do I want to do every day that inspires me? Because if I can find that, then I'm living my best life, right? And I'm still in a search of it
Yeah.
because I'm changing my entire career field, and I in the process is like this is the first time in my life I don't know what I want to do, and I still am just like figuring out stuff and trying new things to see how it feels. But I do know that if it feels good, that I'll keep doing it. If it doesn't feel good, I'm not going to do it anymore. you
Uh-huh.
know so I feel like you're on that
Yes.
path as well. And so I want, because I know
Yeah.
that you have a show coming out. You're going to San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Nevada City.
Mhm.
Tell us, like, give us a synopsis of what the show's about, and what we can expect to see when we come.
So the show is about, it's funny, like my evolution, because I had built this whole identity, career, rhetoric on being a stripper, on being gay, and having disdain for men. And then and all of those things are no longer, right? I
Mm,
mean, I still have disdain for men, and this is what the show is about, right? It's about wanting to fuck them. Because I thought I was like, not, well, I mean, I was attracted to men, but I didn't ever think I wanted to like date them, And then but I got to this point in my life, and this is what the show is about. It's like being 35 years old, your biology, and everyone's different, but my
mm,
biology is screaming at me to eat a dick. So I am listening to my body because you have to listen to your body. And I feel so cringe about that. And what do you do when you retire from being a stripper? And because that's still my personality. Do you know what I mean? That's still very much a gift, a skill that I have, and that people want that energy here. There's no strip clubs. People totally want that vibe. And so it's
mm-hmm,
like, how do I market that? How do I find, and I don't. And so it's like, what do you do when this is like your gift and your talent? And like, what do you do when and also like, I moved to this place called Heterosexlandia because there's only 7,000 people and there's so few of them are queer or are, and but what I'm discovering is that it's not that they aren't queer, it's that they're in the closet, or it's that they aren't aware, or they don't have anyone
Right.
to support that. It's that queer people are absolutely everywhere, but it's very scary to be who you are when there's so much judgment around
Hmm.
that in such a culture that's kind of like, monotonous. So the story is like, what is it like for somebody like me, Jacq the stripper? People all still call me Jacq the stripper. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, I'll always be her, but I'm not a stripper anymore. I've
Right.
changed my name. It's part of my legacy. But I am no longer stripping. But I will always be her. But I'm also trying to get work doing other things. I'm trying to break into the ski industry, and talk about a sexist industry. Dang, you know what I mean? Like it's brutal. So it's taught. So the show is about what it's like to retire from sex work, or when you're kind of forced into retirement, and how to, like, and I don't job, right? Like, I don't do jobs. I work for myself and I get paid
Right.
to do my thing. And like, what is that like in a tiny town? And what is that like? What is it like to date men after hating them for so long? You
Hmm.
know? And what is it like to be so queer and really feel secure in that and find identity with that? And then, and then feel like that's like kind of unraveling because I'm not like, like romantically involved with women at the current moment. And I felt so much kind of like, I have like internalized heterophobia. And it's sort of, the show is about all of that,
Mm.
what I'm going through right now.
Right.
And it's funny and it's farcical. And yeah, it's a funny story, and it's about being a survivor. You know what I mean? It's about like, what it is to heal after trauma,
Right.
and what that looks like, what the baby steps you can take when like you've been quite hurt
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
are healing and you want to
Hmm.
open yourself up again to situations that have previously been pretty brutal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And so you are open now to dating men and women.
Yeah, and everyone in
Yeah.
between. I like
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
but it's funny though. It's like, but at this current moment in time, there's nobody I'm interested in. Nobody,
You're just open, which is
like,
great.
I'm
Yeah, being
open, and
open. I've
Mhm,
always thought, yes, being queer, you're attracted sexually more sometimes to one sex than the other. Sometimes you're open
mhm,
to all of it, but I think it's a
yeah,
soul. It can be a soul thing. You can fall in love with a soul, and I don't think that the sex really has to do with that soul a lot of the time. So I think it's
mhm.
really cool that you're opening up that way. And that you're not putting judgment on it, and you're not
Oh, I've been
being
so judgmental of myself. I've been like, ew, men, gross. Or I was like, I just want to fuck them. Like, this is where I'm at. I'm like, I just want to have sex with them. And then I'm
Mhm.
learning that I don't want to just have sex because the sex is bad. Because like the sex is only good. I'm after good sex. That's what I'm after. I don't want to have
Mhm.
a family. I don't want to move in with you, but I
Right.
do. I'm a very sexual person. I'm looking
Mhm.
for a fantastic lover, right?
Mhm.
And they can be any gender. But I was like, surely I can find a fantastic lover, and it's like quickly, or like in this little town, there's men everywhere, but like I have to have a soul connection
Yeah.
to have
Yes.
to like for that intimacy to give the sex that I want. Like I'm still very hedonistic, but like holistically speaking, and then and it's also about sobriety. Did I mention sobriety? I also don't drink alcohol anymore. I mean, I'm California sober, but alcohol is the fastest way to get into bed with someone. And if you don't do that, there's just like, wow, it's just been a desert. That's it.
Yeah. Remember when we were in Colombia, you had just like started your not drinking alcohol. And
Yeah.
I think it was around that time because you were like, "Yeah, I've stopped," and we all stopped for that. I wasn't drinking alcohol at that time either, and if I go again, I will stop. I think it's just from trying, moving into more of a growth and really caring about myself more, and
Hmm.
taking those steps to do that. But yeah, you still haven't gone back to drinking at all.
I had half a shot it was back in New York City, the last place I drank alcohol. I've been like sober from alcohol for 2.5 years. I'll take a sip every now and again to see if I like the taste.
Mm-hmm.
But my body has developed a distaste for it. It tastes like cold vinegar. I don't like
Right.
it. And I don't identify as an alcoholic. I just
Stop drinking.
it's
Yeah.
I stopped drinking to protect myself from alcoholics,
Mm-hmm.
honestly.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I have, and I also just drank enough. Like I don't enjoy it anymore, but I
Mm-hmm.
also just I don't want my social life to be centered around bars and alcohol. And it
Right.
was for a very
Mm-hmm.
long time. I worked in a strip club. Your job is to drink. That's your
Yeah.
job. Your job is to sell bottles. Your job is
Mm-hmm.
to drink with people because the more people drink, the more they spend. You know what I mean? So it's just like once I stopped stripping, I kind of stopped drinking. Um, but but yeah, from having an abusive alcoholic partner for a decade, I just have absolutely no interest in
Yeah.
um getting close to that at all. I like the boundary. Boundaries make me feel safe, and the boundary from alcohol makes me feel safe because like drunk people are horrible. You know what I mean? And like
Mm-hmm.
I used to extract money from drunk people. So it was my job. It was my survival, right? It's how I
Yeah.
survived. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not my work anymore. And I just like I love leaving the party early. I love driving home.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And I
nice.
love waking up fresh as a daisy. And I'm so rich now that I stopped drinking. Oh my God. It's crazy how much money you save when you stop just pouring it into
Yeah.
alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So talking a little bit about, your show and where you are living in this smaller town, what what do you think the message you hope to get for these smaller communities? What is the message you hope they take away from Heterosexlandia?
Well, some of the
Like
messages that I've heard, I've only done the show twice so far.
in your
And I did it
town.
in New York. No, I did it once in
Okay.
my town. I did it once in New York.
Okay.
And one of the feedback, some of the feedback I got was that it's okay to try new things. Like it's okay. It's okay to like it's okay to want to suck dick after being gay for a long time. It's okay to try being queer if you've been straight your whole life. It's okay. You can be at 35 and it's okay to take 15 years to recover from sexual assault. It's okay.
Hmm.
Like I think what I'm doing, and I know this is what I do, but like I give people permission. That's what I do. I tell all what like it's funny like I had no idea this was my path. I did not really know when I was getting into comedy because my comedy in the beginning was like I'm a feminist stripper, men are dumb, look at me go, huh? And I did really well with that rhetoric. You know,
Hmm.
that like carried me a long time and people loved it. Um but then I developed new rules for comedy through my divorce because in my divorce I wanted to just I wanted to go off on my ex-wife, but
Mm.
legally I could not. I had a clause in my divorce where I couldn't say anything disparaging about her. And all I wanted to do was say disparaging things about her, but I was legally bound from doing so. So I realized, oh my God, I can only talk about myself. And there's so much to roast about myself.
Uh-huh.
So and I learned that like that's very good comedy is like looking at all of your own shit. And then I realized not in like, and it's kind of like vain and egotistical because this is like the dedication to my craft. And this is why I love what I do is that I mine myself for all of the crap and I pull it up and we look at it from all sides and then we like let it alchemize into something healing and beautiful. And it's my healing. My work is my healing and my work is other people's healing. I've learned so much too through like sitting in Al-Anon meetings or sitting in ayahuasca circles. When other people
Mhm.
share their healing, I too heal. So that's sort of like someone called me a conscious comedian, and I liked that, you know, like because I don't really honestly I don't watch a lot of comedy, but I live my life and I just take everything that is gross or uncomfortable. Like I talked a lot about hemorrhoids in my last show. And that's the last thing I want to talk about is a bleeding asshole. But the one thing I learned in having hemorrhoids is that I went to the pharmacy here. There's two pharmacies in town. I went to
Uh-huh.
the pharmacy. I was like, hey, do you have those hemorrhoid suppositories? He's like, yeah, we should have them on the shelf. And I go over to the shelf, and it's a whole fresh shelf. Everything's full, but the hemorrhoid section, the aisle is hollow because everybody has a bleeding asshole in this town. You know what I mean?
Is
And
it
I was
is
like,
it
oh,
something in is it something in that town?
maybe. And I talked to it on stage, and this woman was like, moms, apparently it's a big thing when you're pregnant, you know? And like, for
Right.
me, I can't eat eggs. Okay. When I eat eggs, I bleed from my asshole. People ask me, like, what happens when you eat eggs? I'm like, I don't want to talk about it. But then sometimes I'll be feeling bold enough to be like, I bleed from my asshole. But I do that on stage. I don't say that when
Mhm.
I'm like sitting at dinner. You know, like when I'm on stage with the mic in my hand, I go much further than I do when I'm just like hanging
Right.
out. Well, it depends on the company. But in talking about my bleeding asshole, you know what I mean? I know somebody else, because like I was suffering in silence. And I think also suffering in silence, I learned only prolongs suffering.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of us are suffering in silence, especially in these small communities where people are so ashamed of being judged and of being talked about. And my philosophy is, well, everyone's already talking about me. So let's sell tickets,
Uh-huh.
you know, and let's give them a good show. That's my philosophy is everyone's watching. So give them a show. It feels kind of like the Truman Show here.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, it's a good
But
philosophy. And you're making art from
yeah,
it, and now you're going outside of your town, and you're having, these bigger shows. This is a one
mhm,
woman show.
yeah,
right. Yeah, and
yes.
obviously, with your sign language going on, and
Yeah, so it won't be a one woman show, I guess. It will be my act, but I will be sharing the stage with in LA. I'll be sharing the stage with Caroline Blake. She's an ASL interpreter.
that's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And because you did the one woman show before this that you actually have on tape now, and that you,
Mhm.
um,
The Life and
so that
Divorce of Jacq the Stripper.
yes, I
Hmm.
really enjoyed that. I watched that as well, and I
Yeah.
enjoyed it. Yeah, I did. I really
Thank
did.
you.
Yeah, you sent me the link to it, and I watched it. I really liked it. And I'm
Well, I knew
excited.
you'd
I'm gonna
relate
have
to it.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And we were like literally both going through our divorce at the same time. And I think that, it's funny because I feel now 2.5 years later, I feel in a really good spot, and I feel healthy but I mean, all the way up until, a couple months ago, grief would still sneak up and surprise me, and I was surprised when it came, and
Yeah.
but now it feels like healthy, and I'm very grateful for the experiences I've gone through now because I've changed so much. Like, I look back at the person I was even when you first met me. I feel so different than that person. I feel different than the person I was in the marriage, and I
Mhm.
really am enjoying that growth and that change. But it's funny because obviously we always change and grow as we get older and as years of experience come. But when you're really working on yourself and being aware and present into that work that you're doing, I think it really changes in a different way because I look at back at how I was, and now I'm like, wow, it's very dramatic compared to like a growth that just kind of spurt. After years, you just change and you grow and you become better. But I'm pretty dedicated to just consistently growing and continuing this journey because it feels good. And again, I only want to do what feels good.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, it's funny. I like when you tell me, oh, I'm always reinventing myself. And I hear this from a lot of people. Oh, you're
Yes.
reinventing yourself. And I feel like there's this sort of pressure on women to reinvent themselves to um stay relevant. And I've really been exploring like clinging to relevancy because like I work for the public as an artist.
Mhm.
Like I work for you. Like, are you watching? You're my audience. And like, I hope one day you will support me financially. I said, that's the truth, right? Like, I hope you will buy tickets to a show. I hope you will purchase a t-shirt or an art or something like that. That is how I survived thus far.
Mhm.
Um, and so clinging to relevancy is this like thing that is basically just another word, I think, for staying in the game. You know, like the secret to success as an artist is staying in the game. Like there are days where I feel like such a failure, but I'm like, well, but I'm still in the game. So like I haven't failed. I feel those days happen when I'm alone, you know, like loneliness is totally the worst part of it. But I don't really see it as a reinvention personally. Like the word doesn't connect with me, it doesn't resonate, but I see myself as evolving. I see my soul growing. I see my life changing. I see myself just growing up. Like I'm always growing up. And, you know, we leave careers, we try new things. And if that's reinvention, sure. Yeah. Well, I feel like reinvention was like, that wasn't working. So we're doing this. Like we're pivoting. I'm like, well, sure. But like it worked. And this is change. And I think normalizing it, reinvention almost is like, it's not like just the word about reinvent. Invent is to create something, to recreate something. Whereas I don't feel like I'm recreating something. To me, reinvention is like that was here, this is now. But to me, I'm kind of going on this like up, and I'm like
I
shedding
love it.
skin, and I'm growing.
I
Yeah.
love it. This is something that this is one of the things throwing against the wall and sticking. Like I love that you're saying this because I am looking at the word so differently now. You know, you're right. We are evolving. I'm really glad you brought that up because you just made sense to me. And that was some clarity that it's really interesting because even doing this podcast, finding the right words to describe what you're feeling, what you're trying to say, what you're growing into. Like if you use the wrong word, it cannot resonate with somebody else. And even though you're thinking like the entire time I was using reinvention, for example, even with at the beginning of this podcast, I'm thinking of it as evolving. But you're right, it's not that. It's not that. So I'm really glad you brought that up. So thank you for that.
Yeah, because I feel like, yeah, you're welcome. Because I think reinvent suggests that there was something wrong with
Yeah.
what was before and therefore must be recreated, starting over almost, right?
Mhm.
And and also and I'm like trying, I don't know, and for me it's not that I'm no longer a stripper. It's like I am no longer actively working in strip clubs. I will always be a stripper. I will always put on a bathing suit and shake my ass and hope somebody pays me. Do you know what I mean? Like that will, and maybe one day I won't want that. But
Mhm.
today, I like anybody hands me money, like at my shows, I always encourage people to bring money and always encourage people to tip me. You know, like that's stripper culture. That's
Mhm.
what a stripper wants when we're on stage. That's our validation, right? So I will always be that. And it's not that I'm no longer this person and I'm reinventing myself into a ski influencer, right?
Mhm.
Like what? But it's like, no, this is what happens when a stripper moves to a small town and there isn't any strip club. But the nearest strip club, I'm pretty sure, is like 8 hours driving away, or like maybe a jackpot. So it's 4 hours. I mean, like just very far away. But it's like, what
Right.
does this kind of person continue to do? Like well, these are still very much a part of myself. And like what, like being an artist and being a comedian. I'm even wrestling with this concept of comedian because I'm really like a storyteller. Comedian's just a shorter word. But when I watch comedy, it's like yuck yucks. It's like laugh, 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 laugh. And I'm like, actually, I'm telling you like a very personal, deep story. We're gonna get dark and there will be funny moments and we will also laugh. And like, what
Mhm.
do I call that? Like, I'm trying to figure out what to call myself. If anybody's listening who has an idea, because I know I'm very good at what I do. I know
Mhm.
I feel very confident about my skills as an entertainer. Um, I'm trying to figure out how to market myself so that I can get paid what I'm worth to speak, because comedians beg, literally it's called barking. You
Mhm.
stand on a street corner and you beg people to come to your shows. And it is exhausting and humiliating. And you don't get paid very well. So I'm trying to figure out, how can I get paid for this mug? Like, how can I get paid well to share my stories? Because I know my stories they're all stories of healing, all
Mhm.
of them. So I'm like, this is what I'm spitballing right now. Is like calling it comedy is, it might not be working, you know?
Well,
It's not what you expect. So like, what do I
yeah.
call it?
Yeah,
Well,
I'm
you're
not
going to come to the show. Tell me.
I am. I am going to come to the
Yeah.
show, so then
I
I'll
want
have
your
some more.
feedback.
Yeah, I'll get to hopefully I'll have an epiphany of what to
Yeah.
call it. But I think also, you know, just to a friendly reminder is when you're doing something that feels good, money will follow. It takes time sometimes, and
Yeah.
it takes more
Oh,
time than
yeah.
we were hoping for. But when you're doing something that is heart centered and good inside yourself and your soul,
Mhm.
it's going to work out, and you just have to stay the course, and be okay to change courses if that's how you feel. It's
Yeah.
like I call it jumping off the cliff. I'm constantly jumping off the cliff, and as long as I
Same.
just as long as I'm finding and landing and doing what I feel at the moment is right, then I'm trusting the process. And I've changed, I've completely changed my career to where, I was a producer with a really big job and security with that. And like 2.5 years later, I'm freelancing again. And but I don't care because I'm happier and I'm trusting the process. I know I can make more money. I know that money
Mhm.
is coming. We can always make more money. It's just
Yeah.
about finding what really truly makes us happy first. The money will come. That's my
Yeah.
belief in it, you know?
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I think you're doing
And
great.
sharing these stories. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I really love watching your process and your how all of your journeys. I think you are so brave, and I think you have a lot to say, and I really believe in your what you're doing, and I can't wait to come and see your show. And I'll definitely put links in everything. I do want to ask you what this part of the podcast we're doing what we call quick fire questions. So I'm
Yeah.
just going to you a few questions and just answer them like don't overthink them, just answer
Okay.
them. So
Mhm.
what's one of your daily habits or rituals that keeps you grounded in the present moment?
Writing and walking my dog.
Nice. Okay, so in one word, how would you describe the feeling of being on stage?
Channeling.
Nice. Nice. I
Yeah.
love
I do. I do feel like I'm channeling. I feel like I can do no wrong when I'm on stage.
That's great.
Something
See, you
else
feel
takes
alive.
over.
Yeah, you feel alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love being on stage.
Well, I think that's you I think you're going in the right direction with all of this, and
Mhm.
I'm really excited to see the show. I really am. So, and I have friends
Mhm.
in San Francisco too, so I'm definitely going to tell all my friends in
Yeah.
Oakland and San Francisco to go. Um,
Please.
okay, so what's a piece of advice you've received, or maybe a piece of advice that you want to give, that sits with you and has sat with you throughout your life or career? It doesn't have to be about your career, but just any kind of advice that you've either received or you feel that you should give.
Slow down.
Mm,
And this
that's
is like advice I consistently need to take
mhm.
is slow down.
Is a, yeah, slowing down is a really good piece of advice. Just all the way around in our life, and I think especially in America, I think that we just go 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 go. In other countries, they do slow down. They have siestas. They have, they go out to dinner at 10 because they take naps in the day. It's like we need to
Mhm.
learn how to slow down. So I think that's
Yes.
great advice. Um, okay, one last question, and then I have one more thing. What is one thing that always brings you joy no matter what's going on in your life?
My dog
Yeah.
dancing, dancing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Oh, like,
dog
I mean,
is,
there's
yeah.
so many things. I
Yeah.
mean, like hiking with my dog, like climbing
Hmm.
mountains, a beautiful
Yeah.
view,
Yeah.
friends, and also people. Like when you work alone, when you work for yourself, I know this is a longer question, but like other people, when I work alone all the time and I spend all my time alone, I get into a bad state of mind, like a phone call with a friend or like going to see somebody really changes things. It's like community,
It's,
community.
I think that's a really great answer. I think that, because even earlier in this podcast, you talked about loneliness a little bit. And I think that, a lot of people struggle with that. And I think a lot of
Mhm.
people struggle with loneliness, feeling, less than, not, they don't feel they have the courage to take these chances that somebody like you is doing and jumping off cliffs consistently. And to anybody that is feeling that, I just, you're not alone. And I think that reaching out is a very positive thing, because people are there,
People
so
want to hear from you. Everyone's
yeah,
lonely.
everybody
We
wants to hear from
all
you. Yeah.
to hear from you. We all live in boxes, and if that one person isn't available, like, look, I got a whole list of people I call I need a friend. There's like
Yeah.
5 people, and I just go through them all and see who's available.
Yep. That's
Also,
wonderful.
for the show, I want you to know this, and I want everyone who's listening to know this. When you come to the show, when you come to Heterosexlandia, I also love playing dress up, and I play dress up in my performance, and I want you to play dress up as you get ready for the show. And the theme for this show is dress for the job you want. So I want
Okay.
you to really think about that, and I want it because that's part of because I do a lot of crowd work,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to talk to people about the jobs that they want. So that's just
Good
like
to know.
audience participation is a big part of my performance, because again, while I'm up there alone, I'm not alone. Comedians rely entirely on the audience for it to work. So
Absolutely.
if
Yep.
you want to participate, please dress for the job you want and bring cash.
Okay. And bring cash. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Last question. What is
Yep.
a book that you would recommend, and a quick reason why?
It wasn't even a book. It was a New York Magazine article by Jerry Saltz that said it was called How to Be an Artist. I think it was like, um, it was an article, and he turned it into a book. It didn't need to be a book, but it's a great book. It's a small
Okay.
little hardcover like
Mm-hmm.
thing. But one of the things that really resonated with me was that you only need about 12 people to be a successful artist. And in this culture of chasing followers and growth and
Mm-hmm.
popularity and all of this stuff, and how can you get more followers? I'm like, I'm guilty of that. And the truth is, I've lost 30,000 followers in the last 5 years. So, like, I am decreasingly popular as we speak. But, yeah, because I change, and people aren't as
Mm-hmm.
interested as they were when I was a stripper, when I was my most
Mm-hmm.
popular. And that's okay.
That's okay.
Um, that's okay. I have a lot less hate comments now too.
Mm-hmm.
So isn't
Mm-hmm.
that great? But
Yeah.
that was a great article that I read, and then you can reread it anytime. And he gives you a bunch of art practices that are really cool, like art exercises. Huge fan.
All right. It's funny, when you were talking about that. A very close friend of mine recently just refinished, after many many years, The Artist's Way, and
Yeah, I've done that.
she called me, and she was like, "You got to redo the if you did this book a long time ago." I'm like, "Yeah, like 20 years ago, I did." She's like, "You
Yeah,
got to redo it, because the way that we think now, I think it opens up a lot." So I just wanted to throw that out there, because in case you haven't read that in a
do
long
it.
time, it might inspire you.
Well, that the artist's way got me dancing again, because every day they're like, "What is one thing that you love to do?" And she asks the same questions over and over again.
Yeah.
Dancing was always at the top of my list, and that's
Mhm.
why I started being a dance teacher.
Yeah. Well, Jacq, it was so wonderful to spend this hour with you. We need to stay in touch more, and because I really
Yeah,
enjoy talking to you, and I'm excited. I'm going to put the links in the information below, and then I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks at your show.
me too. Thank you so much for having me, Kristin.
Yeah, it was really great, and we'll talk soon.